introduce our special speaker, Dr.V.Chandrasekar, is Executive Advisor in the Center for Infrastructure and Real Estate, is one of the pioneers from the University of Denver, USA for his thesis in Innovations and Organizational Change. He is an active entrepreneur and advisor for entrepreneurship startups. So with those words, I invite our special speaker, Dr. V. Chandrasekar. Please welcome him with a warm round of applause.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here. And as usual, Mr. Jain started with good motivation and some great pointers. Naturally, he touched upon something that I'm going to talk about, the Model Real Estate Regulation Development Act. Now, they didn't give me a topic to talk, okay? So I chose this myself. And then I realized there are others. You're going to be deliberating on some other acts and regulations also. So let this be the sort of a base or platform from which you can work in your future sessions. Having said that, Mr. Jain probably knows a lot more to what is happening to this one. I have put 201 and then I put a line there because I don't know which year it will come. But my feedback is based on the last version that was there on December 2011. That's the only one that they have put on. So after that, if they have got mind change. But what I found most interesting in this, I've been following this up from 2009. That's when the first draft came. How the mind of a policymaker changes and why it changes. For me, that's a great read to see in a democratic institution. I will talk about some of the points, how it has changed, so you might find that. The question to ask when you make policy is, what is this policy for? What are you trying to do? None of these drafts have one preliminary page which should have objectives. These drafts are put out, but there are no objectives. Okay. Only the government knows the objectives and the people who interact with the government know the objectives. So for a reader whom they are looking for comments or the consumer whom they are looking for comments, they do not know the objectives. So a lot of assumption goes into the first part itself, which is what could be the objectives. Okay. So having said that, let me just go through it, and you're welcome to comment, critique, and let's see where we proceed. This is, as I said, the act is in the process of finalization. So they're taking feedbacks from everybody. And I have to say, CREDI obviously has done a wonderful job in interacting, and it's an organization that I've seen growing, and obviously because of some good leadership there. Okay. Basically the act actually established two new bodies. And the last version of the draft act actually established a third body. That's right in the bottom here, if you see. Plus the formation of a central advisory council. This just came. This is the industry and government at the central government. So there are going to be three people. There's going to be the Central Advisory Council, which will comprise of government officials and industry people, who will generally give guidelines on what the real estate regulatory authority should be doing, or what should be the amendments to the act. And then there is an appellate tribunal set up by the central government, which will essentially take all the issues coming from each one, because the real estate regulatory authority as such is going to be formed at the state level. Okay. Now, when you look at Indian policy making, and you look at the rules and regulations and policies, practically all of them date 3 decades or 4 decades, whether you take the Companies Act, the Industries Act, these are all. Now, somehow we've been managing with it without much amendments also. The reason for that most often than not is, when do you amend a rule or an act? When you find that it's not serving the purpose. When do you find that it's not serving the purpose? When some people are punished or some situations happen when things are not right. How will that come about? When we are really active and things get to the court and to the public. Given our time orientation and the way we do, nothing of these comes really into the public. So we can still live with acts and rules that are fairly old and occasionally do some tweaking to them. So from that point of view, I'm very worried. If we do not put this act properly now, even changing this will be very difficult in the later phases. So you're going to have a real estate regulatory authority that's going to be set up by the state. You're going to have an appellate tribunal that will be set up by the central government. You're going to have an advisory council that will be on top advising. I think the advisory council, which has just come in the last version, is a good idea. At least the advisory council members can go to the public or to the media and say this is what has happened, and then of course there are various significant issues there, like furnished clearances, permits registration fee, 75 registration valid now for a time period for the promoter to complete. You have some opportunity to postpone it, get 2-3 extensions, okay? Now, things like, real estate authority will check authenticity of documents within 30 days. I mean, these are all not possible in India. I mean, I got some real estate documents whose authenticity I'm trying to verify. That's taking me 4 years. Okay, I'm still not able to figure out if there's the history of it. So I do not know how this 3 people appointed will, and just imagine how much money they will need if they have to go through these documents. I was telling the other day to somebody at Infosys, set up a new section, because they all have to set up website, they all have to put the documents, and all the real estate developers have to enter into the website and put their information. So it's a massive software needed, okay? And the software demand will have to be, it will be nice if it's uniform software. If it's not uniform, can you imagine? Each state will have a different software. So a developer who inputs in one state will not be able to know what to input in the second state, so there will be massive confusion, okay? And the proposal on its base really says work is done on the website, okay? It's an assumption, okay? Which means this should have been the first criteria, okay? We will have one software, one requirement of data, which will be given, and that will be across the nation. No, that's not there. It's not been thought about even yet. But I'm giving you a very good business idea, entrepreneurial. Get a software for real estate authority, and you can create a company, and you probably will do well, okay? Then there are no cross use of funds allowed. Maintenance of separate accounts mandatory for each project. Now, this is a very difficult proposition to execute in a country like India. I'll come down, China has an ESCROW accounting system, though I do believe that it's necessary, but this cross use of funds is not practical under the Indian conditions. You might want to say allow maybe 50% of cross use of funds, okay? And be more logical about this than just banning it. The thing that's frightening about this bill is the liabilities of the promoter and the penalties to the promoter, okay? When you look at the liabilities, first, no alteration allowed after the sale agreement without the consent of buyers, project architect, and engineer. I mean, normally this will continue to happen because designs keep changing. Okay? And it's a good development always has changes till the last minute. And to make that, if you can imagine that you're a builder or a developer, that each change you keep on inputting and get everybody's permission, already you take 3 years to complete a project. It will only go on forever. Okay. Promoter to pay back the buyer, that's fine. Promoter liable for unfair. Yeah, liable for unfair practices, the definition is so vague. What is unfair practice? What is fair practice? Okay, this is going to be a major issue. I said that then this offenses. I mean, every person, including the director, manager, secretary, staff who have left, staff who have joined, I don't know, is related to the offense in any form is liable. So this I think is again an unimplementable clause. Okay, penalties for contravention of different clauses. If you don't register the project, imprisonment of 3 years. That is the clauses that hire of a fixed sum of fixed penalty for various changes of plans and things like that. Penalty for non-payment by consumers, non-compliance of the order of their authority, which is imprisonment of 1 year plus 10% of the project cost. And finally, you can't go to another court and get a stay order. Okay, stay order is not allowed in this authority. Okay, normally that's how our life functions. Okay, so that is not allowed here. State government to make new rules and the RA to make new regulations, which means what you started off as an original thing from the central government, you have thought of something. It might go to Jharkhand and take a very different orientation. In Karnataka, it might be totally different. Okay? So, I do not know how and what form it will be a couple of years down the line if everybody can make the amendments. Okay? Now, let me talk about the positive aspects of the Act. We do need regulation. There are two things I think we definitely need for the real estate industry. Actually, three things. First is the industry status. If we get that, a lot of things will get corrected. Once you get the industry status, I also would like us to have a good exit status. Okay? Because there is no point putting an industry if you don't know how to exit the industry. We do not have exit status. Okay? The other day I was chatting with some friends of mine in Bangalore, and you know, Kingfisher is a case in point. The airline doesn't exist. Initially, when it was valued, there was a huge value to the Kingfisher brand name, right? Now, some guys are asking me, how is it that that brand value could not be, used here in this case? I said, look, if you had a good Chapter 11 bankruptcy clause, where when you see a business is in trouble and you say, you got hell of a lot of debt, somehow you've gotten into debt, cash flows are not generated, you're not able to service the debt. What do you do under a Chapter 11 bankruptcy? You just go and say, boss, I will settle the debt for a percentage to the dollar. If I owe you $1, I'll give you 5 cents. And let's close. Or, better still, I'll give you 2 cents, you hold up and wait for 3 more years, and then I'll give you 5 cents. So that you don't bother me. Let me continue to function. In either of these cases, I will hold the brand, and I could still sell the brand when I restructure the organization. So we do not have, our BIFR is, again, how many years? 4 decades, 5 decades old law. So it has no value. Once you get into BIFR, you are under the ground, generally. Okay. So you need industry status, a good exit status, And the third thing that I think we need to know is, if these two come, automatically a good financing status will come for projects. Okay? So, having said that, these are the wish list for the general industry. So, we do need regulation. Once you give an industry status and exit status, sure, please regulate. No problem. All countries do regulate real estate. Now, the positive aspects this act will immediately give us is the creation of information hub. My academic orientation deficiency comes in, bias comes in because I want data. Okay? I'll get data. Okay? Today I do not know what is going to happen next to my house. Because every government, every municipality, every authority changes zoning laws as and when they want. Okay? And nothing is fixed. So how can you talk about tomorrow's value of a property when you do not know what is going to be next to that property tomorrow? There are problems in Bangalore for waste management because they wanted to segregate waste and nobody would allow them to segregate waste next to their house. Okay? Because the value of that house goes down. So that is good. Introducing of the rating system, as we talked about already, good. Quality of construction in check, great. Project price reduction could happen due to return to multiple investors, high land prices can be countered, some degree of uncertainty can also be reduced. The act would terminate the trend of pre-launching and soft launching. To some extent, that's all right. I think we do need to that. Sometimes the financing could also be better if it is tied in with the banks, and the banks, right from HUDCO, decide, okay, whenever we have the RTOK, we will fund. Knowledge of the end product in detail, helpful tool for consumer redressing, termination of cross-funding, promised specification ensured, safeguarding consumers with guarantee. Sanctions. The sanctions made easier. Act claims that there will be steps taken to make sanctions, but I do not know. The Act does not contain this as yet. This is actually a major lacuna. I'll come back to this very soon. It's not encompassing all stakeholders. The state is a stakeholder. The district is a stakeholder. The city is a stakeholder. The zoning regulations are what it is. The civic agencies are stakeholders. Okay? So if you're going to, if the Act title is Regulation and Development Act, okay? Development depends on civic authorities. You have not taken that. Government authorities, their functioning is not accounted, either at state level or at a district level. Okay. Somewhere it should connect. Ideally, this Act should have connected to the state government and its functionaries in some form and made them accountable. Okay. If you can see, it does not provide any relief for the promoters against the time-consuming bureaucratic process of getting various sanctions approvals for a project. As of now, there are more than 50 approvals that is needed for a project to get none. Delay in project development. Of course, not states have power to decide the fees and penalties. This is a big thing. So I do not know. So this could be an incentive for some states to do more real estate development in some states than some other states. I do not know how it will pan out. Does not cover, okay. Some criticisms, it does not cover already existing projects. Projects that are 1 year old, once the Act comes in, they're fine. But any project that starts in the last 1 year will have to again stop the work and get the permission. That is again a penalty is too aggressive. Creation of a common act would not be effective since India has a very heterogeneous population. opens new vistas of corruption. I'm just thinking of these three real estate regulators. I would definitely like to get into that family because my future will be very good. I do not care which state those regulators are. Okay, I would like to put myself for adoption. Okay, because they will probably become forever real estate authority guys, and they will be really rich very soon. Okay, and additional layer of paperwork, hell of a lot of more paperwork. I mean, this is the kind of paperwork I don't think the requirement will ever be fulfilled by our developers. Let's talk about what happens in other countries, just to give you a framework. In Canada, real estate regulation is a state matter. Hence, each province has its own regulatory authority and their own legislation. Let's take British Columbia, one of the province. The Real Estate Council of British Columbia protects the public interest by assuring the competency of real estate licensees and ensuring their compliance with the Real Estate Services Act. So, British Columbia has a Real Estate Services Act. Different aspects of real estate are covered in that act under 8 different legislation, which includes legislation pertaining to real estate services, real estate marketing and development, council laws, licensing and assessment laws. The Real Estate Development Marketing Act and Regulation pertains to the development and marketing of properties in British Columbia. This act covers the aspects of the proposed regulation act in India. Okay? We do not cover the marketing. Our act, as we have done, is very much, Right now, what we have got is this one. Okay? But BC's regulation doesn't end here. It has got, so what we have missed there, frankly, is many other aspects of development. Suppose a developer does not follow the local zoning law and yet gets a permission or approval somehow, comes to real estate authority, furnishes every permission and does it. And then the state wakes up one day and says, I can't give occupancy certificate. So what happens? It's just not there, not even thought of. So having said that, Sweden uses real estate development agreements to regulate development of an area of land. These agreements are set up between municipalities and developers. The agreements regulate all stages of development, which are divided into 3 parts. Process up to the approval of the detailed plan. This includes decision about planning, detailed plan, preliminary study of the project plan, design, decision of approval, detailed plan, everything. Then comes the second stage, process after the decision of approval of the detailed plan to the approval of a building permission. Okay? Now, the third is the process from application of building permission until the building for ready to use. This includes the application and decision of building permission, construction of facilities, roads. Now, what we are doing in these 3 steps, our act only deals partially with this third step. It is not dealing with the first 2 steps. I mean, there are 3 steps, 3 stages. Okay? We have taken the third stage and half of that third stage, and we have created a regulatory authority. Okay? Now China. And after all, I have compared one middle income nation, Canada, one developed country. Now let's see China, which is very much the same issue. China today has something called ESCROW system. It's basically if you collect money for a project from any consumer or a bank, that money goes into that escrow account and can be withdrawn only for the development of the project. Okay. Now, this escrow account is very interesting. The other day somebody was asking me for some rules and regulations for timeshare industry. And you know how the timeshare industry operates. You just go and sell a vacation timeshare for a week. You collect the money. Okay. You don't even have to have that vacation listing. You just can buy it from somebody else and then sell it to somebody else for a week. I can come to this hotel and take 10 rooms for 10 weeks, and I can go and sell it to you. And I have not paid this guy, but I collected money from you. I only make a deposit here. So I have the money and I can use. So in US, there is a law that says all timeshare activities, once you sell a timeshare, it should be developed and it should go into escrow account, the funds. Now, this escrow accounting is a good approach. Overall, it's healthy. It shows and commits the developer to that particular project. Now, in China, it's about 100%. How the developers get around that 100% is essentially initially projecting a very low cost of development, okay, and then showing great profit and then managing some cross use of funds. But in essence, it's a good objective. Having said that, so China, that's the only difference. Otherwise, China's rules are all the real estate rules are local. There's no other regulation except this major regulation. Once the local authorities approve that you can build and the plan is sanctioned, you can build. You can create in a village a 400-foot-story building for nothing. It can be empty, no problem, as long as the local authorities have okayed it, okay, and you are willing to live with it. Now, what are my suggestions that are based on this draft? I think we could have some escrow system, but I would suggest that this escrow system should be limited to a particular percentage of the funds collected, not all, okay. Then the regulatory authority should become the single window clearance agency finally, state or non-state issue. Stamp duties should be reduced because already we have incredible amount of stamp duties in each state. To some extent, we should start looking at registering the promoters and then not maybe individual projects too, but 2 levels of registration probably will benefit the system much better. Particularly, if you notice, in the last one they have said, if you have a development that's in phases, each phase will be looked at as a separate project by the regulatory authority. That is dangerous. Okay, you on the one hand you want CES to develop, you want towns to develop, okay, and then you say everything that's done in phases will be looked at as separate project. It just doesn't make sense. If you have phases, then they should say the promoter should be registered, not the project. You know, some orientation, better orientation. And then of course the Urban Land Act has to be repealed if this has to work through. Licensing for agents, property dealers and brokers should also come in. Hopefully, along with this, we should also have exit mechanism. We should have real estate investment trust, okay, and liberalized lending.